Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam Nasser, and this is the Cleveland Azure User Group. A little bit about the group. We meet every second Wednesday of the month. The meetings are free of charge and open to the public, and we cover a variety of topics related to Azure. Before we get started, I'd like to give a big thank you to our sponsors, PostSharp and DevExpress, for sponsoring the post-meeting raffle prizes, the .NET Foundation for sponsoring the site for meetup.com, and NIS Technologies for sponsoring the meeting space. We have a special offer from Manning.com, 35% off on a selection of books, and the link will be posted in the chat in just a little bit. Some general information. Please keep in mind participation is encouraged, and the only stupid question is the one not being asked. So feel free to jump in at any point in time with a question or a comment. You can do so either in the chat window or come off of mute and speak up verbally. However, when not speaking, kindly ask you to mute your microphones just to avoid any background noise. Also, the presentation will be recorded and will be posted on YouTube in just a few short days. For tonight's meeting, we have Ron Dagdag. He's going to be presenting to us on IoT and Azure. Ron is a seasoned software artisan with over 20 years of experience in the industry. He currently is the team lead for Spacee, where he works in IoT, cloud, and machine learning. Ron is an active member of the tech community. He is an MVP in artificial intelligence, mixed reality, as well as IoT. And not only is he a frequent speaker at conferences, but he also attends user groups such as ours, and he also loves to tinker and utilize AI, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and augmented reality also in his spare time. So it's not just a job, but it's also a hobby. And so with that, let me turn it over to Ron. Ron, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Sam. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. If you're listening to this at a different time. My name is Ron Dagdag, and today I will be talking about exploring the land of IoT on Azure. Let's get started. So, like I said, I'm very interested in Internet of Things, machine learning, and mixed reality. So that's me. It's a combination of all these three things that I've, in my spare time, as a hobby, and also where I work, understanding these technologies, how they impact us in the future. So this is my daughter. I challenged her, and she was 3 or 4 years old back then, and I challenged her to, build a Lego house. And she built this for me. I think it's really cute. You know, does not look like a house. Maybe there's a roof over there. I mean, there's no walls. There's a little kitchen. I enjoy it. I'm a proud dad. And when she built this, and it took her a while. It took her, hours while we were at this Lego conference, and and we enjoyed our stay over there, or that conference over there. And then a few years later, I bought her one of these kits to where she can build these Lego uh, boxes, where it's kind of have all these different instructions. So my point here is, which one is simpler to build, right? This one is a work of art, very custom, and this one is simpler to build because it has all the step-by-step instructions and all the parts that is needed in order to build this small house. Either way, she enjoyed playing with Legos, and it is simpler to kind of build it with instructions. All right, so today our agenda, I will be talking about Internet of Things. I will focus my presentation in Azure IoT Central, which is a big part of how to understand all things IoT in Azure. What is the benefits towards that? Because it's of IoT Central. What is a device template? And we'll talk a little bit about IoT plug and play, how to visualize the data, how do we integrate it, and we'll go for some questions. Feel free to ask questions in between. This is a meetup, and appreciate the discussion back and forth. So feel free to unmute or put them in the chat, and we can continue with the discussions. So, what is IoT? IoT, there's the word Internet of Things. So technically, there's things that you send data from those things to the cloud, and then based on the data that you receive and collected in the cloud, you do some transformation to your business. At the end of the day, those are the three main things. The main goal of it is to transform your business based on the data that you're getting from these things. So what is Internet of Things? It's a connecting internet to physical sensors or physical world via sensors. The fun fact is the world's first IoT device is back in IoT 1980s. It is a vending machine that reports its content through the network. Then they would what is that is the um, one way to monitor and track what is inside the vending machine. IoT is coined by Kevin Ashton back in 1999, so it hasn't been called IoT before that, and it's any device that interacts with physical world around it. So there are two goals whenever you're setting up an Internet of Things system. One is to remotely monitor a device or a thing, right? So that's where you start gathering some data, do some device processing, and get the status of it, of that device. Another one is controlling that device. So sending commands to it, maybe rebooting that device, sending commands remotely, setting some device properties. Typically, whenever you want to start working on Internet of Things, it has to be connected, of course, to the internet through, you know, through different means. Nowadays, if you want to get started, there's Raspberry Pi that you can get that, learn more about it. And of course, there's Arduino where you have either microprocessor, which is a Raspberry Pi is a microprocessor, an Arduino device is a microcontroller. So different ways in how you would set up. One has an operating system, one runs it through maybe a real-time operating system and all that. Of course, you can deploy these devices at your home or a factory, controlling some robots, or could be deployed in different areas like like hospitals or different types of businesses, or even as far as remote location, like the petroleum industry is using Internet of Things to collect data from those well sites. So what are different attributes of a successful IoT solution? So when you're building an IoT solution, you got to think about these things. One is you need something that would scale, meaning not just the number of devices that you can connect to it, the storage, the compute, make sure you can do multi-tenancy and also networking. Another one is device management. The life cycle of each one of these devices had to be considered. How do you provision a device? How do how do you update that device? Um, and of course the life cycle of it, because you might have to replace it with something else later on. So how do you keep track of each one of these? And then big data management. Big data, as you collect data from these IoT devices, identify what is the path, meaning the hot path, that means real-time data as you receive it. The warm path might be delayed a little bit. Cold path, you do the storage. So how do you process each one of these data as you receive it? Where are you going to store it, or how do you process that data? Cold path, typically you store them into, maybe a blob storage or a place where you can extract them later on. Analytics, insights, and extensibility. course, you want to build some rules, automate some of these actions, and integrate it to your to other systems in Azure. So as you receive this data to IoT, to IT Hub or to IoT Central, how do you send it up outside of IoT Central? How do you integrate with other systems? Or if you want to know, build some rules or some actions that says, hey, this device is is broken. How do you get alerts from that? And then there's high availability and disaster recovery. There's you got to make sure that the solution itself is resilient enough, and some items, some things need to be monitored closely, and because it's mission critical. If you think about this in a factory, safety is important. So these systems have to be highly available and can recover. And then security and compliance. Some of these IoT devices can be deployed in places where that the connectivity or it's that it can easily be stolen, or something like integration with other systems, and you got to make sure that data that is on those devices can be protected, not just in the device itself, but also in the cloud. Then managing IoT solutions with DevOps. And this is one of the things that is important. When you're building an IoT solution, think of it with DevOps in mind, because building and managing, how do you provision, how do you deploy code, not just on the device side, but also on the cloud side too. And then, of course, understanding the total cost of ownership. There's different techniques on how you would put these systems together that can be cheap. Some of them can be cheap, and some of them can be expensive. Any questions so far? Feel free to ask or unmute. I'll be able to answer some of your questions. All right, so nothing in the chat. Anyone familiar with information technology? We're all familiar with that. When we talk about cloud, software as a service, HTTP, VPN, a lot of the typical IT side of managing machines not just in the factory, but in the offices. And then there's operational technology. This already exists a long time ago, because we've had all these, think about these SCADA systems or IoT, not IoT device, but sensors that controls, not just robotics, assembly lines and machineries. The people that manages those, it's called operational technology. They make sure that these devices are 24/7 running, and make sure that they are they are effective or efficiently running. And IoT is the combination of IT and OT, and there's that there's that overlap that's happening. Looking at the user roles in Internet of Things, there's the administrator side, where it handles all the administrative tasks, assigning the permissions and roles for whoever is going to use the system. And then there's the device developer. Typically, sometimes they're called firmware, or these are the people that write code on those IoT devices, connecting it with the sensors, and based on those sensors, what are the things that we can collect, what data can we collect. And then the operator side, which is the one that manages connected devices into the IoT cloud application. They're the ones who monitors what's going on to these devices, either remotely or on site. And today, there's also part of the solution builder, which is, as Azure developers, this is where we come in, where we build the IoT cloud solution, the cloud side of things, where these devices can connect to. So today, I will be focusing my presentation on the solution builder side, not necessarily the device developer side. So the solution builder is what do you do once you have the devices connected to the cloud, and what can what can Azure help us on that? So what is IoT Central? It allow us to connect, monitor, and my IoT manage IoT devices at scale. The keyword here is at scale. Connecting IoT devices into the cloud, there's different ways in how you can do that. But if you're talking about scale, thousands and millions of devices, that's when you start thinking about how do you do it in Azure using IoT Central. Um, you can quickly connect the device, have a centralized management system, ability to visualize the different data that you are receiving, and it's the bridge between the business application and the IoT data that you're receiving from devices. So how would you leverage it for things? You either collect the data, then once as you collect it, you start monitor that, analyze it, and then decide what you're going to do with that data from the device. So IoT Central manages the devices and how to acquire and connect and secure and manage those. So IoT Central can give that for you, and then what you do with that data, we can focus that on the transformation piece. So what are the benefits? It's low code environment. It's it's good with dealing with non-frequent changing data, meaning it's able uh, to determine some settings. There's already some ready-to-use templates that is available. There's different types of device measurements. So if you have like maybe temperature data, it already has the different types, or highly uh, specific type, and of course it's highly secure authorization and authentication from start. So remember, I told you there's things, and then cloud, and then transformation. Things is how does the devices connect? How can we, it's either some of these devices can be a gateway. How do you run those jobs? And then how do you manage it? Those are uh, on the cloud side. How do you manage these devices? How do you view and how do you secure them? And all of that is built on top of these existing platform as a service system. So IoT Central kind of collects all these different platform as a service to make it easier for us to be able to connect these things to the cloud. So you've heard of IoT Hub, the DPS, which is the provisioning system, data stream data coming from these devices popped into streaming analytics, and Data Explorer is using Cosmos DB, SQL DB, and then it has a way to export the data, trigger and query it. So for the data transformation. All right. So like we said, kind of like the analogy that I was talking about in the top of my presentation, IoT Central is like the Lego kit, right? Um, it is you're already familiar with infrastructure as a service, which is VM devices in the cloud, and then a lot of us are familiar with software as a service. Think about that as uh, think about it as Office.com, right? Microsoft Word in the cloud, right? So you have that subscription, and then platform as a service is infrastructure focused on software development services as PaaS. IoT Central is application-focused software development service. So it's closer to a software as a service device, but it's application-focused. So it all has the building blocks in order to put together an easier way to build an IoT solution that it has the patterns that is needed in order to get things going. And it's the same way as you have the instructions on those Lego kit. Um, like I said, it's using a lot of the different platforms or different platform as a service in IoT Central. So it allows us to be able to uh, combine those without worrying or without thinking about how to tie them together. And then, of course, being able to export them into different settings, different areas in IoT, in Azure. All right. So when should you use IoT Central and when you should not? So if you look at your team, it's gonna and a lot of people are not familiar with Internet of Things. This would be a good time to kind of look at what IoT Central can provide you first. And also, if you need some customization, it provides a little bit of customization. It has a ready-to-use application within some customized options. But you can build a companion app on top of this if you need something custom built solution from scratch. So it could be your backend system in order uh, to do some of the customization that is needed. There is Azure IoT Hub. Sometimes that is a better option, especially for experienced professional that wants full control over their IoT solution. Granted, IoT Hub has a lot of features that is involved, and IoT Central allows you to simplify that process, and it helps simplify that. So think about it. It's like what made Windows successful. What made Windows successful? It really is because they work with device manufacturer to have all these compatible drivers. So when you plug a hard drive or you plug a monitor, it instinctively know that, hey, this monitor would fit well in your computer. I remember, 10, 20, 30, 25 years ago when I first started using computers, you're gonna download this driver, making sure that it's that is correct driver, and you update, and through time it became automatic that all these different things are compatible, and make it easy to put things together. The same way as these Alexa devices, if you're talking about IoT devices, you buy one of these lighting and it's Alexa enabled. It allows you to be able to easily connect to your existing system or existing account through that. Of course, Azure IoT has a way to do that for Azure IoT Plug and Play, where you can integrate smart device solutions to reduce the manual configuration. It already has a capability model or device model that advertises itself, what it's the capability of that device. It reduces and eliminates the hassle of configuring devices. So if you go to devicecatalog.azure.com, there's you can find devices that are compatible with IoT Central. Granted that most of these items out here are specifically geared into mostly manufacturing or something that is more business rather than home, right? So they're targeting more of the industrial space or the retail space or the automotive space, different areas, hospitality, more into the business side. And today I'm going to talk about this ESP32 Azure IoT kit that is available there. And let me see if I can show you an image of what I have of that device. Come on, see if I can move this. Okay, so I have my device here with me, and I'm going to do a demo on this one later on. And it is connected. Okay, so there are 9 things to set up the Internet of Things. Well, one is the device type. You have to think about what is the type of device you're working on, and then the device template, and provisioning, the provision device. How do we monitor this device? How do we visualize data from these devices? Uh, Jobs, and being able to run batch jobs, or being able to say, I wanted to uh, update these items on certain number of devices and batch them. Data export is being able to send, where do you send the data out of IT Central or out of Internet of Things in Azure, and then rules, being able to notify, then set up different rules, and then REST API. Before I start this, are there any questions so far? Feel free to unmute. Um,
I don't see anything in chat. That's pretty much straightforward.
all right, I will continue on. Let me know if I'm going too fast.
Absolutely.
Too. So device type. Yeah. So let's start with device type. There's three things you have to consider whenever you're building an IoT device and connecting it to the cloud. There is an IoT device, which is a freestanding device, meaning this device has connection to the internet, it has Wi-Fi in it, and it can send individual sensors data directly to IoT Central. It's either you're sending telemetry data. Telemetry data is, like temperature or some data pressure, or however, data from these sensors, you can send it to cloud. Reports, it reports property values, what is the settings or setup or configuration on that device. It receives writable property values, and then it would respond. It also can respond to commands. So let's say it can receive reboot commands or receive command to be able to set up some, like some certain configuration, right? Another one is an IoT edge device. An IoT edge device, it's a device that directly connects to the internet. The difference between an IoT device and IoT edge device is has the ability to process more data locally. Typically, it's a standalone IoT device. Think about it as a Raspberry Pi. It has an operating system. It has a more stack. IoT edge device can run containers. It can run it can run more workloads. Um, so so that is different. An IoT device typically has a firmware that connects directly, or a software that connects directly to IoT Central. An IoT Edge device, it can connect to IoT Central, but you can use containers, or you can use um, Docker images to run each one of to process more data locally. And then the gateway devices is it acts as a middleman that connects downstream devices. So it manages other devices that connect to IoT Central. So think about, there are some certain devices that does not have the capability to connect to the internet. So you can bridge the gap having a gateway device, and this gateway device connects to those devices that does not have the internet. Maybe they connect it through a serial cable, or they connect it through a different way. Um, and then it bridges the gap that it would send the data through um, the cloud. So of course, there's different ways in how you would connect this connection. You can share how would you connect, and what is the security required in order to connect it to the cloud. Shared access signatures typically is how you get started, but preferably you would use X509 certificate. So each one of these devices have their own unique certificate, or using trusted platform module TPM, which is baked directly to a chip inside that device that stores the connection, uh, the the way and how we would connect to the cloud. Different ways on how to communicate to the cloud. Typically, a lot of IoT devices uses MQTT. You can also use HTTPS, AMQP in order to send data back and forth from cloud to device or device to cloud. So also, whenever you're working with an IoT device, some things you have to consider is the device template, which is considered as kind of like a blueprint definition. It defines how are you going to receive the data from the device to the cloud, right? So it's the handshaking mechanism. Um, Telemetry data, typically it's what the device sends to the cloud, what format it's going to look like, and how do you interpret that format. Properties are the device that synchronizes with the cloud. Typically, that's called device twin. And then commands. So this is commands is typically the cloud calls on the device, meaning data that's being sent from the cloud to the device. So we'll talk more about that once I show you the different areas in IoT Central. Okay, so let's do provisioning in IoT Central. Just little fact, you can actually connect about 1 million devices to per IoT Central app. So let's look at this. All right. Okay. So if you go to apps.iotcentral.com, you can actually provision, or you go to apps.iotcentral.com. This is a way where you can provision. It does require you to have an Azure subscription in order to get things started. Sometimes the easiest way to get started is to go through this 5 minutes to live data sample right here. You can build your own custom device and our Azure certified device, like I was telling you about the Azure certified catalog. That's one way you can do that. And then how do you manage your devices, and then view the big picture of what data is coming through, and how do you extend it. So we'll go through each one of those. Um, so in order to build one, you can use this create app, or go through each one of these items or here if you know what type of IoT system that you're interested in building. So there's already pre-configured sample out. Might make sense to learn more about this because some of them cost money in order to set up, and it would build up other Azure systems. So for example, if I go through this connected logistics, it gives me the architecture of what's going to go, what it's going to build, uh, the data that's coming through IoT Central, and then where it's going to send the data. So it's going to build an Azure function and all that. So there's some items that are available here that can accelerate your learning if you're new to this. I built. You can build a custom app, and it asks you for application name. It will send the URL, or you can name that URL, and then you have two choices of what type. In each one of these systems, there's always two free devices. So it depends on how much data are you sending to the cloud. Um, there is cost involved. So typically it's about 50 cents or 40 cents per, let's see that, per device. So depending on the number of data that you're receiving. So the tier 2 is about 70 cents per month. The tier 1 is 40 cents per month, but that includes about 10,000 messages per month. And then anything more than 1,000 messages, then it'll add some charge. Okay. So in this case, of course, set up the billing info, um, the Azure subscription, and the location. There's different location where you can set this up, depending on where you live. So I already made a sample or used one of their samples over here. one of the pre-canned uh, data that they have. So like in this case, they have disconnected waste bin. There's different items here where you can talk about connection. How do you analyze data? How do you manage the data? How do you extend the rules, security, and then settings? I also made a sample one over here from scratch, which is a custom application. So you will load, and I have two IoT devices that I got it connected. Okay, let me try to. Like I said, IoT Central is an application platform as a service. So there's customization that you can do, right? There's you can change the icon, what it would look like, change the name, the URL, the application ID. You know, you can delete or copy this application. You can customize it a little bit, the browser icons and all that. The application colors. There's also the permissions and security. It gives you the capability to add a user, who's the administrator um, on this. You can, let's see, you can add different roles. It has all these different roles to start with. There's the app builder role. You can manage every part of the app. There's the app operator and then the app administrator. So you can assign a user to what role they are. You can do the device connection group and how it would connect from the internet, the device to the internet. And then this API tokens allows you to be able uh, to call the IT Central API. So provisioning a device. Let's go back to the presentation. How do you provision a device? So we provision an IoT Central. Now, how do we connect the device? So provisioning, in this case, you can click this create new device. So I go to devices, create new device, and it will just specify device name, device ID, and the device template. So I'll talk more about device template. You can start with nothing. And then you can, if you just want to test it out, what it looks like, you can do a simulated device. And then, is it an IoT edge device? You're talking about this IoT edge device running containers at the edge. You can do that. So in this case, we're just going to create an IoT device, the sample device, and then after you create it, it'll give you a connection string, and each one of these devices will have their own connection string, and then you have your device name right here, and then it'll give you like the primary key and how you would connect to it. There's different ways in how you would connect the authentication type, the device ID, and all that in order to connect. And that's what you would use in order to connect to the cloud. So you would provide that information to the IT, the device vendor, the primary key, or how you would connect, or the certificate. You provide that, and that certificate or the SAS key would be um, embedded into the IoT device. They would develop that and set those settings. So whoever is the manufacturer of this IoT device would uh, place that into the device itself. Like in this case, that's what I did uh, on these IoT device that I have here. Okay, let's see. So for this one right here, I actually embedded the connection string or the primary key. And also you would need the information, the scope, and then the device ID. So think about it, each one of these devices have their own way of connecting to the cloud. So if one of them gets compromised, the whole thing does not, because then you can control each one of these. And then of course the device monitoring side, which has the health and the application of these IoT device. You can do application monitoring through, of course, Azure portal. There's metrics that you can do to know what's going on with the whole IoT Central itself. There's also each one of these devices can be monitored and identified if there's any issues. So, you know, you can analyze and collect historical data and what they did. Yeah. So let's try to see that one here. So that's what I did here. I created an IoT device. It's already connected. Um, so this is a sample of a connected device. It tells me, hey, this the last data that we received. It is connected. It's provisioned that it actually um, received the data, and it allows me to monitor what's going on. So this device has been running since the start of my presentation. This device does collect temperature, humidity, light, and pressure, and it has a way to graphically show you the data as it receives it and what is the latest data. So it can do that. And this is out of the box in IoT Central that allows you to do this. And you can also send commands to it. I can toggle an LED on this device. So let's see if I can run that just to show you that it's actually connected. So I have my device here. Oops. Okay, where's the other one? Okay, this is that device. I will click run. I will toggle. And what it'll do is it will try to see if it sends that data. I also click this run. So now it started sending those commands. Notice how these two items did toggle. So let me try to run it again. Turn that off. So you notice how it receives that data, untoggle and turn that off. So there's commands, right? So this is the commands. This is the telemetry data. That means the data that I'm receiving from device to cloud. That's the telemetry data. And then there's properties. Properties are these items right here that determines what are the configuration data, what type of the software version, the operating system of that device, the architecture, the memory, the manufacturing, and all that. So those are properties coming from the device. You can also look at the raw data. So the data that I've been receiving from the cloud to device, you can see that here. And so these are the data that's being sent from device to cloud. And then the device template allows you to, based from this data, allows you to uh, understand what type it is. Like for example, temperature, it only has a number, but what is the unit of measure? So that is what the device template would do. So you can edit a template of this device right here. So a device template would identify if I receive a command, what type of command it is. If I receive temperature, which is from the data that I'm receiving from the device, it is a telemetry data. And what is the type of it? So it's specified here. The type of it is double. I'm expecting a double, and it's in unit of measure. In this case, it's Celsius. All right, so that's for the device template and the device group and device monitoring. So I did talk a little bit about how you can visualize data. And as you receive data from the device to the cloud, you can visualize it using IT Central. You can it also has a way to explore data as you receive it. So in this case, each one of the device belongs to a device group. It identifies what type of device it is. Like in this case, this device group as ESP32. I wanted to get let's say the temperature data, and I want to analyze it. And now it has a way for me to visualize as I receive that data through time. Okay. There's also ways you can build dashboards. So different dashboards for different things. Like in this case, I can build. Uh, so think about it in a factory. Each one of these factories, let's say you have 100 factories, each one of them have different organizations, and each one of the factory has their own dashboards. So it allows you to do that here in IT Central without a lot of programming. It's out of the box that allows you to do this and set this up. So that's visualization. Jobs allows you to manage connected devices at scale. If you want to update device properties, cloud properties, there's device templates, running commands. So you can do this through jobs. Let me show you what that meant. Maybe do a demo. I did a good job. Am I doing a good job so far? You're learning something new? Yes?
Absolutely.
So just to let you know, yeah, so um, IT Central jobs, you can actually have 5 concurrent job executions, meaning there's 5, maybe it'll make sense once I go through that page here. So there's a way you can have jobs. So think about it, if you have lots of devices now and you want to schedule a job to run some task, right? So you specify the name, then like in this case, let's say, let's go through each one of the screens. I think I have screenshots on this one. Um, so you can configure a job. I want to send a command to each one of the devices to display something. Over there. Okay. I think I hit back. So I specified I want to send a command, I want to display a text and the content. I would say hello world. And then I can easily set up and batch them, or there's a cancellation threshold. I mean, batch them, let's say you have thousands of these devices, you all want them to set it up to a certain, configuration. That's one way. And then you have the cancellation threshold. If you're starting to have an error after a certain percentage of those devices, you can do that. You can, yeah, and of course it would send the command. It would show you uh, what the command would look like. And then after it runs, it gives you, let's say 100% complete, how many failed, and how long did it take you. So they're out of the box. Once your devices are connected here, you can actually run these settings, these batch commands or batch jobs. All right. Now I'm going to talk about how do you extend IoT Central. So how do you extend it? You can use data export, rules, or through the REST API. So IoT Central allows you to use these things in order to, let's say, send it an email, call a webhook, use Power Automate on other things, Azure Monitor, connected to a blob storage, connected to an event hub, a service bus, or any other custom applications you have. So this is where you can customize it to, let's say, all these different data points. And I'm going to talk about how would you do it through a webhook. So we have some data in Azure or in IoT Central. We wanted to call a webhook in order to, let's say, to get triggered. So in this case, I specified destination. So how you would do that, you can specify here where you have the data export. You can specify the destination. Like in this case, I already built one. You call your URL where it's going to post to, and then the authorization. Okay. And of course, if there's headers involved in order to call this URL, okay. And then there's the export side where you can specify certain types. So I only want devices that has the word device on the device name. So I can filter all my IoT devices that way. And then I can also do enrichments and specify, okay, do they belong to certain organization? Think about organizations where you can um, classify or you can group devices together. So let's say, factory one, factory A, factory B, that can be a name of the organization or sub-organization. And then you can specify the destination where you're going to send the data to. And then there's a way you can do data transformation. Data transformation, I'll talk about that a little bit. So typically, whenever, in this case, we specify um, that we want to get data, okay, and this is a device connectivity event. So when a device wakes up, it got connected to IT Central, I want to know about it, right? I want to export that and learn that, hey, there's a new IoT device that got connected. I can export that to call a webhook, but the data that you would receive is like this. So it has its own specific format, which good and bad. It's like I said, it tells me the organization, it tells me the different cloud properties. That is what it's going to send to my webhook. So there is a way you can do data transformation. So there's a specific format. It's using JQ in order to transform that data. So as I receive it, I can filter down that I only need device name, template name, messages, enrichment. And what is that? I just want to extract some data information. So once that data in and what gets sent to that webhook would be something like this. So it's a filtered version rather than this whole, JSON data. It would look much easier to read. And then, of course, whichever you're going to receive it to on the other end, then you can format it accordingly. So out of the box, it allows you to have a little bit of programming, right? Filtering some of these data as you extract it out of IoT Central. So that's what I would talk about here, about the data export and the different transformations that we can do. You can rename the fields, you can filter out, sometimes run simple calculations. So the data transformation that would allow us to simplify the data. Okay, so data integration. Next step is to notify the rules. This way you can notify operators if there's something going on, or maybe you can do this as a business workflow, or maybe as part of the custom alert. So you can build rules, and rules looks like this. So rules allows, in this case, I want to set if the average temperature is greater than a certain degree for 15 minutes, then it would allow me to send it. So in this case, I want to know the device template, what is my target device, and if my target device, in this case, there's the condition that needs to be met as part of the rule. So on the 15-minute interval, what's saying here, if the temperature is greater than, if the average temperature is greater than 30, then let me know. So that's part of the condition. Okay. And then now you can set up an action that if once it hit that, send me an email that there's something wrong. So that's one way. The email would look something like this. It tells you that it's coming from IoT Central, and it would tell you what the measurement is. And so that's how you can build those rules. So you can have all these multiple rules to let. The good thing about this is this is geared towards an operator. So each location, maybe each factory have their own rules and how they would want to monitor these devices. So you can build all these different rules. All right. Let's go back to the presentation. Are there any questions so far? No? Okay, I'm going to continue on. You can also send it to a webhook or Azure function or a logic app, as long as you can connect to a callback URL. So that's one way you can get alerted if there's some rules that are set up. Finally, we talk about REST API. Since IT Central has a way to manage devices, you can also manage the devices through the REST API on IT Central. So you can do app management, you can device model, onboard device, the data and insights. There's, of course, limitation in how you can call these REST APIs, but it's a building block that you can build your custom app on top of it, and you just call these REST APIs. So there's lots of them that is available. And also, we use this for doing DevOps stuff. So now I can create a device template, I can create jobs, I can control the different items without going through these screens. I can control them using the REST API. So first thing, in order to do that, you need a token. You generate a token. And so once you generate a token, you have to specify what is the role of that token. So in this case, this is an operator role. And then now I can send a sample request. A sample request, in this case, I wanted to control a device, this device, that is the name of my device. I wanted to send a command on this device, and then I have to set up the authorization and then the body, and then send that to the device. So let's try that. I have that sample here. So this is my device. See if it's a little bit blurry, but I want to make sure that you can actually read that a little bit. Okay. And then I have see if I can call that REST API. I have my API here. I have, let's see. So I have the post. I'm specifying displaying the text on my device. That is the name of that device I have over here. And I pass in hello. That's this one. I think I have the wrong. Yeah, there you go. This is the right one that I want to showcase. Hello, Azure Cleveland. And I will click the send request and see what it's going to do. There you go. It says hello, Azure Cleveland. So it did send so what happened here is I call the IT Central API to control this device, my device, and send a command and customize it, and then I receive the response, if it's successful or not. That's what it received here using the token. So I have to pass in the authorization token in order to call that. Cool. All right. Any questions so far? Okay.
I have a question in chat, Ron. I don't know if
Continue on.
you had a chance to see it about what happens if you have an intermittent outage where the device can't connect to the cloud and you're collecting data points and sending them to the cloud.
Yes. So it depends on that item, right? Or the device itself. If it can't connect to the cloud, then it can't send the data, right? But if it's a gateway device has or an IoT edge device, I mean, an IoT edge device has more capabilities because you can run containers. It's using Edge Hub. It has a way to buffer some of those messages if it can't connect to the internet. So it can store that locally and then send it to the cloud later on. So depending on the type of device that you have, sometimes it can cache them before it sends it to the cloud if you have intermittent data. But the good thing about this is once it gets connected, and then uh, any setup that you have, or let's say you have some configuration changes from cloud, right? So for example, um, what I'm saying is that let's say I have this device right here, and let's say it got disconnected to the internet, and I want to send a command. Of course, if it's not online, there's nothing to receive it, right? But if I'm doing a device twin allows me to be able to change some settings from the cloud to the device, and being able to change some settings here, and then any settings that I have in the cloud, once the device connects back to the internet, it knows how to sync itself. So that is one way that you can set it up to where there's the idea of a device twin, that it synchronizes the data between the cloud and then the device itself, whatever settings it needs. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. Thank
Does
you.
that help? Yeah. Welcome. Okay, so I'm going to continue on if there are no other questions. Of course, there's some, like I said, there's OT and IoT, the operational technology. There's already existing industrial machineries that has existing data. There's a way that you can connect, like these machineries that uses a certain format, and then you can connect it to a gateway, and then from that gateway sends it to the IoT Central. Typically, we call that industrial IoT. So there's partners that can do that to help connect these uh, industrial IoT devices. So you can start collecting them or start monitoring them, and then based from that data that you receive, then build business insights. So typically use that for um, predictive analytics or predictive maintenance. All right. So in summary, what is Internet of Things? It's remotely monitoring and controlling a device from the cloud. What is IoT Central? It simplifies the creation of an IoT solution. It combines all these different technologies, platform as a service, to improve or to make it easier for us, the developers, to create an IoT solution. What are the benefits? Of course, I've shown you different. It is low code environment. Of course, the different items that I showed you. What are different device types? We did talk about the different device templates. Then how do you provision a device, and how do you monitor and kind of see what's going on to a device? How do you visualize that data? How to do a batch job to control a device, or maybe set up those device twins. The data export, data that you receive from device to the cloud, and how do you send it to different areas in IoT, no, in Azure, and then how do you build the rules, and how do you do automation using REST API. If you are interested in getting some of the resources of the presentation I had today, feel free to scan this QR code. I also have it in my GitHub account. There's a lot of things that you can do with IoT. There's a lot of items involved. I only focused on the things that I know. So a solution developer or as a cloud developer, how does that impact us if you have a project related to this, and different guidance on what is available out there for you. And also, I will put that in the chat after my presentation. I have some free, some resources that is available that you can use out there, and you can also take a picture or screenshot this link in order to understand some of the resources that is available. There's a tutorial out there on the kit that I showed you today. That is a quick start. Also, the REST API. There's lots of tutorials out, a sample out there you can do. There's also, if you want to learn more about IoT, Microsoft Learn has a lot of resources for you, step by step. And if you want to learn more about me, my name is Ron Dagdag. I'm Director of Software Engineering at Spacee. I've been a Microsoft MVP. The best way to contact me is through Twitter at Ron Dagdag, or email ron@dagdag.net, through LinkedIn. Feedback is appreciated. Like I said, my name is Ron Dagdag. If you are a Sims fan, Dagdag is goodbye in Simlish. So goodbye, everyone. Did you learn something new today? What did you learn something new that is new?
I personally
thank you
did.
very much. And
That was a great overview, by the way.
I learned a
yes,
lot too. I have a question. What
yes.
percentage of the market for IoT uses this automated? This looks to me something like Microsoft Word, as opposed to Notepad or something
Mhm.
where you have to learn the
That's
lingo
correct.
of
That's
it.
correct.
And how many people
Yes.
use that as opposed to writing their own applications to control the IoT devices? Is this useful enough that they don't really have to create applications anymore?
So the guidance from Microsoft is start with IoT Central. If you have an IoT project, look at its capabilities first. And if the project requires a lot of customization, meaning a lot of control on the device side, then it makes sense to use IoT Hub or all the different area, those platform as a service. But it makes sense if it's something that we're able to connect through IoT Central. That is the quickest way to deliver the project, and also the most scalable way to deliver that project. And and of course, a lot of the things like all the different features that it has that are already geared towards that you don't have to re-implement the same thing, right? Granted, you can implement these through IoT Hub or through, maybe starting from scratch, but it already has all the building blocks, like those Lego things, right? Like, you can build your own Lego or you can build your own house, but you can follow instructions into a set of tools already pre-built for you, already have a stack of different things, and then you can extend it and make it your own.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It looks to me like
Yeah.
it's going to use a different type of systems engineer or application engineer. Like you're not actually
Mm-hmm.
writing code. You're learning how to use the GUI to get what you need, and it's quicker. It's already
Yes.
tested, proven. You know what I mean? So it's just a different avenue for engineers to
Yeah,
use
and
as opposed to development.
that's correct. And a lot of big companies out there, they have they're already using this in production. So that it is something that is is being used every day. It is something that is being used in a lot of IoT devices that it's out there as a back end system of a front of an application. So like I said, since it has all these REST API, it has a lot of these customization that we can do as an app developer, that allows us to make this as a kind of like your IoT database. Does that make sense? Uh,
Yeah, I mean,
so if you need, yeah, so it builds all the life cycle, the rules, all the things related to managing an IoT devices, uh, and putting it together.
yeah, it like removes all the overhead. They've got all that
Yes,
underlying
that's
and
correct.
tested, and then you just pick the options you want, and then you've got a system quick. I'm just thinking because
That's correct.
a place I used to work actually had an application that did the IoT monitoring. And they had the dashboard and they had,
Hmm.
they coded all of that and then they had to maintain all of it. And that's a lot of overhead to
That's
where this,
correct. Yeah,
you plug and play.
and yes, that's true. And also, you can get that data. So if you don't want the dashboard capability, you can pick, right? You can pick which ones. So maybe the operators can see those dashboard, but your custom application for your customers may see a different graphical information, right? Or how do you integrate this with some of the visualization tools like Power BI and all that? So you can get the data, but there's also a way to quickly build it as you go. Um, there's also ways in how you can start building not just the provisioning side, but the security. It already has the security in mind. IoT and security in IoT is a very complex uh, problem, and there's different devices out there. So the IoT plug and play allows you to say what are the things that are available that can connect now, and start from there. Uh, and start integrating this. And if you have to build your own custom, because this is a specifically custom device, it allows you to do that too. So it has a lot of the different things to get a person started in IoT, especially if it's building something for a specific industry.
Yeah, I see a lot of distinct advantages to it as far as the security and it's already there. You just make selections kind of thing. The biggest downside I see is that, it's another dependency upon Microsoft or Azure or whatever, but you know what, we already are. So, the world already is.
Right, that is true. There's a dependency in the IoT in Azure, but same way as maybe you have your SQL Server and you use the SQL Server in Azure already. So
Right.
like I said, this is kind of like your IoT database, right? This is how you keep track of your IoT devices out there rather than storing it in your SQL to know which devices are out there. That's
Yeah. This was
that's one
very
way.
interesting. You did a
So
great job. Really nice presentation.
thank you, thank you.
I echo those comments as well. Well done, Ron.
I appreciate it.
Um, I just have a question. I know since you obviously work in it and it's your hobby, what are some cool things that you've done with IoT as a side project?
Um, I've been investigating to mixed reality and IoT and how you can visualize it through, you know, HoloLens or through how do you visualize it through a device, right? So those things. Um, and my interest is more trying to kind of like what are the things out there? I typically it's called augmented intelligence. How do you uh, I see in the future where these devices are going to be uh, you know, part of a wall, right? You get what I'm saying? That it would be part of an existing item, kind of like you think about fridge these days that has these screens, right? It is an IoT device. A refrigerator has become an IoT device. A microwave has become an IoT device, and you can get all these different controls, different you can see inside the fridge, and you can see all these sensors coming together in order to improve uh, different lifestyle, right? So those are the experiments I've been doing. You know, most of the stuff that I've worked on, if you want to look at it, if you go to uh, ron.dagdag.net or yeah, so www.dagdag.net. It's on my Hackster page. So there's some experiments out there that I've worked on. Interesting stuff.
What
Gotcha.
do you think? What do you think about the news that's come out about artificial intelligence being really dangerous animal? I mean, I know anything is. There's a good and a bad to everything. But how do you feel about that? Because you're into the AI, the visualization, mixed reality, augmented, whatever you call that,
Yes.
intelligence. How do you feel about all that, the
Yeah.
danger of it?
At the end of the day, these are different tools, right? As we developers, we know, we learn about these different tools. And of course, any tool can be used for bad or good. The same way as when we first got the internet, we didn't thought we're going to have, when we first got an email, we're excited, hey, there's an email, we can easily communicate. Of course, spam happened, right? So it can be used for other things, and spam became a problem, right? That's the way I kind of see it. Also, kind of see the way I see AI. If you think about how we're creating buildings 20, 30 years ago, right? Whenever an architect created a building, before they started with computers, they were doing it on pieces of paper, doing the architecture, creating those blueprints. Eventually, uh, they moved from paper to having it on the desktop computer, and then now they're doing 3D modeling. And through the years, we've able to build complex systems or complex buildings. If you think about the buildings today, how efficient it is as compared to 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it's all because of all the different technological changes that happen. So for us, these are different tools to create more complex systems that enables us to have more efficient systems, more effective, user interface, right? More, like in this case, you know, a sensor data rather than sending a bunch of sensor data to the cloud, right? Because we're talking about IoT today, and we're sending data, the temperature data. What if AI can run at the edge, right, at the sensor level, and then be able to filter which data needs to be sent to the cloud? That is more efficient than sending all the data to the cloud and then analyzing it later on. So all these AI stuff, it's not just, there's good and bad about it, but the way I see it is there's just like any other tool that we have out there, it's uh, it's being responsible for those tools. And the more we educate people on how to be responsible, how to add the security systems, how, what are the things we can use with this, um, then we can move forward with that.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating whole new arena. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the ads on TV with the man who's visually impaired, and he opens his fridge and puts
Hmm.
his phone, and they're like, shelf, the top shelf contains this, and the middle shelf contains this, and then he can choose what to cook for dinner or what to pull out to eat. It's pretty
Yes.
fascinating. You can go to a store and it'll read what's on the shelf for you to know where to move your hands to buy it. It's really it's going to do a lot of enabling for accessibility.
That is true. So, it, if you think about when we first started computers, we were using keyboard and there's no mouse. Once the mouse started, our user interface have changed, right? So it's kind of
Absolutely.
like the same way as in AI, right? We don't have a concept of being able to move. Now that we have augmented reality, you can use your hand without any other system, right? With it kind of analyze the environment, but AI does help on that. It reduces, it might be able to improve how we interact with our surroundings because of that too. And especially now that we're starting to build AI into some of these sensors, it becomes more and more smart, uh, that it can understand. Think about the watch itself, right? It's actually running AI. Some of those smartwatches, how does it know you're sitting down or running? That's using AI already, uh,
Right.
because you think about how much data that you're actually analyzing there. It's actually running AI and analyzing, uh, you know, are you driving a car, or are you in driving mode? Are you running? Are you sitting down? That's already a good application of AI that's we already use every day. It just becomes natural for us because it knows, right? The phone has become efficient, battery efficient, because it knows that you're not holding it. So at night, it knows how to sleep the apps because of AI. So a lot of these different systems or sensors are becoming smarter because we're adding a layer of machine learning on it.
I have one more question, if you don't mind, if I'm not holding you over too long.
Oh, sure.
Um, at your particular job, how do you use AI and how do you use IoT?
So we do have IoT devices. As the company we work for is Spacee, we do retail analytics. We have a robot that runs back and forth and to scan the shelf and then analyze the products of each items on the shelf. If it's out of stock or low stock, and then also we read all those barcodes. We do a lot of computer vision. But each one of those devices that are actually on a track uh, that is mounted on the shelf, each one of those are IoT devices. We also have augmented. We do also do projection mapping. Projection mapping, so we can turn surfaces into interactive surfaces, and so that is another way for us to able to use to make it an IoT device that does not require us to uh, in order to monitor and deploy these devices at scale.
Well, this was all really fascinating. It was a great topic, and you did a great job presenting it. I really enjoyed this. It's the coming thing. If
Thank
if
you.
I was 20, this would probably be. I would either do this or forensics. I've always had a love for forensics. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like this. The way I see it, and that's the reason why I'm interested in this, is because computers are changing. We move from desktop to laptops, and then we move to cell phones and all that can do stuff. And a bunch of these devices are becoming more and more capable enough to be able to do much greater and become embedded into things, into items that are, like I said, not just appliances, but everyday stuff. And being able to uh, connect that to the internet, it provides more capabilities at the end. So yes.
And just to comment on your comment, Jan, I don't think that it's the future. I think it's the present, quite honestly. It's alive and well in a lot of various things, a lot of products, a lot of services.
Yes.
And I think businesses are starting to take advantage of AI and utilize it to essentially gain the edge on their competitors. So it's alive and well. It's here to stay, and it's only going to grow. And I personally love working in AI as well. So, but again, not to get away from the meeting. Job well done, Ron. Highly appreciate your time, and it was a great overview. If you would please, if you could send me the PowerPoint presentation, and I will share it with the team or whoever is asking for it.
All right, we'll do. I'll put it in the chat.
Appreciate it. Before we adjourn, just have a couple concluding slides that I wanted to cover. And if I may, I'd like to take the screen back.
Sure.
All right. So in the chat window, there's some links for resources, specifically the link to the YouTube channel, as well as my blog post. And there are technical events that are posted, and we'll walk through those in just a second. But more importantly, the feedback evaluation that's listed at the bottom of the slide, the link for that is also in the chat. So if you would please take a moment, fill it out, and we'll provide some constructive criticism to Ron. As I had mentioned earlier, we have a special offer from Manning.com on a set of books, and the link for that has also been posted into chat. And the discount code is MTPCLEC21. As I mentioned earlier, we have some events that are coming up in May. So this is from a previous presentation that I gave. So obviously May 5th had elapsed, but May 11th through the 13th is the Global Azure event. That starts tomorrow, and it runs through the 13th would be Saturday or Friday? It would be Saturday. And that's essentially an all-day meeting relating to Azure topics with presenters from all over the world. Free of charge, online, and so it's very accessible. And then on May 20th, which is a Saturday, is the Ohio North SQL Saturday. That is an all-day event, again, free of charge for attendees, unless you're ordering lunch. And that essentially compiles a variety of different topics related to SQL Server. So we're talking about data analytics, database administration. I will also be talking about utilizing artificial intelligence with T-SQL. So there's a variety of different topics and tracks, and it's open to the public. Also, another thing that we like to do is discuss job openings. So if you have any job openings that you'd like to advertise in your place of employment, or if you're looking for new employment, please feel free to send me an email, and I will share my contact information. My email is snasser@nistechnologies.com. You can also find me on Twitter @SamNasser. And then my blog, where I post the links for the tech events, samnasser.blogspot.com. And lastly, if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, I invite you to do so. And with that, a big thank you again to Ron, and look forward to seeing you at another event. And thank you all for attending. Good night, everyone.